right. So thank you guys for jumping on. I'm sitting here with Terrence of Model M along with Eris Filmith. And go ahead and give us a little bit of background on where you're from, Eris.
Originally born in Toronto, and I've been in Germany for about 12 years now. So now I'm in Brandenburg, close to Berlin.
Oh, nice, nice.
There you go.
So yeah, I've heard a lot about you from Terrence and your collaborations and everything like that. And I was also checking out Bio Music Productions as well. You got like a podcast and like an album out recently and everything.
Yeah, actually, that was my first solo album. I've done many over the years, collaborations such as the ones I've done with Model M. Levels of Absurdity is the podcast, and it took off. But I put it aside, and I'm planning on doing it now seasonally. So anticipate early next year the second season to be coming out.
Dude, that sounds awesome, dude. So yeah, pretty busy guy over there in Germany, huh?
Too busy. That's. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it's a thing, right?
No, definitely not. Yeah, busy's never bad, but yeah, it will take up time and headspace.
Definitely.
And with working with Model M and everything, how long have you guys been working together and collaborating?
I have to actually do the math in my head for a second.
I think it is a lot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Terrence and I, we've been buds. We originally met through a mutual friend of mine who originally found Model M through an advert in a magazine and tried out to be the guitarist at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't work out with him, but Terrence and I clicked and we remained good buds and making music on and off.
Absolutely clicked, yeah.
Yeah, and that must have been 2003, 2004.
Yeah, it was 2003. It was just after I released Freedom from Want.
Freedom from Want, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's closing in on 20 years now. Look at that, buddy.
Yeah, 20 years, and go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, it's crazy how quick time flies as a musician.
When you look back on
your projects, yeah.
Oh, huge. When you look at all the different work, the different bands, the different collaborations, it's a big thing, when you really put it all into one pile. You don't. We usually typically only have one or two things on the go, but as a whole, it's a lot. Looking at my Bio Music Productions page, I decided to kind of headline a bunch of stuff I've done, and I couldn't believe how much quickly came into that pile. So.
Oh yeah, you start, like you're saying, putting it all into the pot, and you look at it over like the whole discography of what you've been doing over the past 15, 20 years. It's just like, wow, I did all of that. Wow.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think Terrence, he did a lot of discography work. He's got a. How many you got now, Terrence, in total?
Eight albums. Eight albums.
8 albums. That's not bad. And I mean, for me, I was more of the live drummer, guitarist, bassist. So I've been wherever I can fill in the hole that was needed. That's what I had been doing pretty much since I started. My first real project. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the last EP, him and I solely worked on, and
that's true.
Solely this. So this was our last EP that we actually worked together. One song we didn't work on was Pandemic.
Well, there was that, but I thought that Nina and Alex did a little bit on it too, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. I don't know.
No, Alex didn't do anything, and there was no Nina. The other 3 songs were only done by you and I, which I really, really, really liked, by the way, working with you. I've always really loved working with you.
You know what's different this time around, Jonathan, if you don't mind me going into it a little bit.
No, for sure. Please do.
The big thing that's different now is I think that for me in my life, and Terrence as well, but for me specifically, I can say that one dream I've always had, no matter what I've done, where I was going, what I had planned, was to have a studio in my home and to be able to get up in the morning and play drums for half an hour before I do anything. And I've had that for the last couple years now. And so all of a sudden, for the first time, making music isn't like a thing I got to go do. It's something that's always around me. So the ability to jump on the set and do an EP with Terrence within the matter of weeks is possible now. And that wasn't a possibility before. For me to have my microphone, my sound cards, everything plug and play ready to go is a new endeavor. And that also speaks for the time and era that we're in as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I mean,
oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, just with like music in general, there's that whole process of where it does take a minute to, accumulate all the right gear and like knowing the sound, knowing the things that you want to utilize, and I mean, I can't tell you even on the guitar end of how many guitar pedals over the years I bought and literally had to shelve like 3/4 of them.
Oh yeah, dude, I just got into some of these new VSTs that are coming out, and they're mind-boggling. Like one of the death metal bands I'm playing with in Berlin, we set up the computer, and we were talking about the old stacks that we had, and literally when you compare it A B, there's a difference, obviously, but the sound that we're going for is sometimes even better what we're getting for what we're going for. You get a sharper edge, more control, and so on and so forth. Whereas you don't, like, obviously when we're talking about going into triple rectifiers and old PV Mark 8 and stuff like that, you're gonna have that sound, right? But we're talking like the ability to just put down even $50 and pick up a VC, like a VST that you can really go on, specifically for industrial music. I think that's the big thing that's changed for us. Terrence and I, the amount of time and money we spent on samples and testing tones on keyboard synths back in the 2007 era was a disaster. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And now it's like the stuff he's giving me is because obviously Terrence tends to write idea forms, like however you might even beatbox a couple of things out if it gets the idea across. The point is that by the time I get it, it's something that I can really work with, and we're not necessarily spending all our time searching for our sound and how we're going to produce it. It's more of a reflex now than ever.
Yeah, so I would interject here that a lot of what I write is lyrics and the feel of the song and keyboards. A lot of keyboards. I use a lot of keyboards, and the basic timing and whatnot. And Richard Eris takes it from there, and he does the bass playing and the drums, and he'll change around the time and stuff like that to make it more interesting sounding rather than what I come up with. But a lot of the sounds that I come up with he uses anyway for the drums. So yeah.
Sometimes I layer them over top, honestly. It works out well.
Yeah. There's a lot of that,
but the big thing too is, I mean, Model M is Model M, and Terrence has his own unique flavor of the way he likes to have things mixed and the way he wants things to be as a collective on an album and so on and so forth. So it has been a really cool, now that he's in Vancouver. Sorry, not Vancouver anymore. You're in Los Angeles, and I'm in Berlin. And even with this 9-hour time difference, we actually get along quite well with our schedules and have the ability to collaborate. I would actually say more efficiently than in the past when we even lived in the same house.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, I love you, but I want to live in the same house with you.
Well, we did that. We did that, and it lasted. It lasted like 6 months. Different girlfriends coming in and out. It was hard.
It was hard.
I had the top floor.
Yeah, dude, I've been in that exact same boat. I was in a band called Exiting the System, and me and Casey, we kind of wrote the music together. I did like the business side, lyrics, and some of the writing on like the first album, and he did a little more of it on the second album. But we did same thing. We lived together, and it was me, him, and his girlfriend that were living together. So there was times, it worked, and then there was just times where it's like, man, like if we had a studio, we could just meet up somewhere.
Yeah.
Office. Huge. A different rhythm. I think that was it, right? Like I said, is for me to get up and want to hit the drums. That's my thing, and it's always like, if Terrence is in relax mode in the kitchen,
right?
it eventually, whether you want it to or not, it does make an impression, right? And it's not always the best one.
Yeah. I think everybody has a different rhythmic, desire when they're living alone. Then it can clash. I mean, hell, you can marry somebody and this can happen.
I mean, like with you being a vocalist, Terrence, I mean, I don't know if you've dealt with this too. Like with me as a vocalist, I like recording at nighttime. I don't know why. I can't really specifically say why, but I know
interesting.
Like back in 2011, I think it might have been from like the time frame of getting off of work around the time I really started noticing it. But I had my closet that I used as a vocal booth at one of the houses I rented. and it's completely pitch black in there, and had like one little dangling light. I did a little like half moon carve out of the door so I could run a little snake cable in there for the headphones. And so it's always just, but I don't know if it's a way of like comfortability for me for projection or just letting it all out or whatever, but it always seemed like I was always recording my vocals, or at least getting the best takes of vocals at nighttime.
Yeah, for me, so for me, writing is 20 minutes in the morning, around 7 o'clock or before. 20 minutes. That's all I do. That's all I can tell.
Well, you are a different animal. I empathize more with John on the set. Like, for me, I find that my brain it hits a second wind after being awake for about 16 hours. It does. It really does.
That's why.
it might be.
You're so tired. That's why you finally get into creative mode.
I don't know. I think it's like back in the day, I was a big fan of Coast to Coast in the 90s growing up.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Art Bell, man. Love them.
Yeah, huge. And that was a big thing that he said too. He said, when the noise of the day settles down, your senses, they open up to be able to listen to all these other fine things that you just are too busy to pay attention to throughout the day. And I think that musically, that it absolutely translates for me. Huge.
Yeah, I'm remembering. When I used to work a job or something like that, maybe the first few minutes of the day, and that was it. I wouldn't think about it again. But generally, I only work 20 minutes on music. Generally.
Yeah, but you also wake up every day at like 4:35. So I mean, like I said, you're a different.
Well, I get up I got up today at 4 o'clock.
Nice point being.
And like I go out and run, and then I go into my gym, and I like by 6 o'clock, man, I'm ready for breakfast.
Yeah. And we've experienced this in the studio actually quite a few times where he's up and he's ready to hammer it. Right, he's ready to go. Like I said, that's for some reason that 16-hour mark is like a thing for me where I notice it just clicks and now I'm in overdrive, but creative overdrive, right? Whereas with Terrence, when that 16-hour mark hits, or maybe even like a little higher, I'd say, like as you sleep a little less, but like let's say that 18-hour mark hits for Terrence, he's off, he's gone. Right? He has no more ability to focus on anything. So this is actually typically where I tend to take over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember I would send him tracks and I just finished them. I just wrapped it up for the evening, and then I'm going to sleep, and then bam, it's done when I wake up.
Oh, that's definitely the benefit of living on different continents, huh?
Yeah. So it's very strange. It's very strange because when I send him something, I think, oh well, I'm gonna see it tomorrow this time, and no, it was done. It's done like in 8 hours or 6 hours, or 4 hours. Yeah. By the time I wake up, it's done.
Yeah, sometimes you can get really inspired that way. And kind of maybe going back on to what Eris was saying, with you being able to come up with a really good skeletal structure or a palette for the song, and going back to the VST things, with the digital age and everything, because, I've kind of always been 50-50 on that, where it's like, you'll never get that direct sound of analog that, digital will be the closest conversion that it can get. But like, playing a VST from a Moog, then actually feeling in the whole, the tremoring and the presence of playing an actual Moog is a lot different. But for being able as an artist, or even artists just starting out working with VSTs, I mean, it saves you so much money in the long run when you're trying to find out what guitar tones you like. You can go buy, a VST pack for like $100 or whatever, or like Ramfire or whatever. It's like, okay, I like this, and because I remember when I was a kid, the first guitar I ever got was because I watched Slipknot and I seen them play, and I looked at Mick Thompson. I was like, I want that guitar. Didn't care anything about it, what brand it was. I just wanted it. So I went and got and I played left-handed guitar at the time. So I'd pay an extra like $100 for a left-handed BC Rich guitar, and got a practice amp and everything. And right before I freaking turned that thing on, I just, in my head, I was like, this is about ready to sound like Slipknot. Freaking turned it on, pushed in that little distortion knob, and just I was like, wait a minute, what happened? And then I realizing that's like, oh wait, you got to pay attention to what's behind them and what they're using.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like I was saying with my death metal band over here, we're really focused on an overall tone for everything we're doing. Like we don't do a lot of switching, right? Because it's just
Right.
like a straight up like extreme deathcore going, we come from that analog feel. You know, we like the sound of hot tubes, and for me with the bass guitar, you know, I've always liked that Carnivore or Peter Steele kind of sound.
Yeah.
And right, with industrial though, every song has its flavor. Sometimes every song might have like 5 flavors, and I find that to be actually specifically on the last EP we put out, you get to see that even just on the bass guitar side alone, the tone is switching like 3 or 4 or 5 times in one tune, because I'll be alternating between sub bass. Because sometimes that's the cool thing, is I think that now with dubstep and drum and bass, you know, pitching in and a lot of the people collaborating, I'm seeing a lot of producers take on, me myself, you know, as well, take on techniques that used to be exclusively drum and bass and dubstep, and now we're injecting that in order to achieve those sub ends that we never previously had. You know, when we go back to Wax Trax Ministry and Canadian like Skinny Puppy, it was completely different. Even Nine Inch Nails, like none of those guys knew what they were doing with sub frequencies back in the day, right? And now when you listen to the stuff that's coming out, it's like every piece of the spectrum is properly monitored and adjusted to do what it does. And for like I was saying, going back to the guitar thing, it really the guitars are now are more molded into the song, specifically when we're talking about industrial rock. It's a completely different ballgame.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember the first remix. The guy that showed me how to program music the first time, I was like 19, 20 years old. This guy, Jeremy Adams, he did a project called Nix, and they actually got a record offer to do Wax Trax, but he didn't have a band at the time. And being in like this certain area of Indiana, cornfields and stuff, it's kind of hard to find members. Like even like rock musician guitar players to be like, hey, you should come play guitar in my band. And you play for them like isolated guitar tracks, and they're like, what is this? And like we went and we downloaded, because Nine Inch Nails put out a remix kit for Wish. And so when we downloaded the remix kit, there was like 50 guitar tracks on there. And it's all different, like different tones and everything. And like you're saying, back with the industrial, like, you know, Skinny Puppy Ministry, also KMFDM was this way back in the day, where they would run like huge vacuum cleaners through distortion pedals and stuff, and like just do crazy modifications to get these guitar tones that you wouldn't even tell that they were guitars half the time. You'd sit there and be like, oh, that sounds like a synth, and no, and then you start incorporating guitar synth stuff and all that. So it was really cool seeing the experimental side of electronic music, and like, you know, and using the elements like you were saying with like dubstep, and like what's kind of like getting popular in a different realm. Like rock can get popular in rock, and, you know, industrial can get popular in industrial, but now you kind of see where there's elements of all these different genres that can be utilized and appeal to different audiences just by the tonality that they use.
Huge. Well, that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's the one thing cool about industrial. It can borrow other styles of music and incorporate it.
Yep, big time. I remember when Skinny Puppy came out with Protest. It was a big problem. All right, it was a big problem in the industrial scene for a while. But then all of a sudden, everybody started doing that. I think that was the thing back in the day. You know, once Skinny Puppy did it, it was okay.
Yeah,
until then it was. Exactly.
KMFDM too is another one.
Oh yeah, big time. But I think that was one of the first times I really heard, you know, that type of production. Even like, I can't call that drum and bass, but it definitely, you start to see that the production of drum and bass started influencing their work. And I see that a lot with what's going on now too. Like I mentioned, you go online nowadays. You go back 10 years ago, you couldn't find a proper Ableton tutorial to save your life. Right?
No, not at all.
Now. Yeah, right. And now it's just like it's oversaturated, and unfortunately, it's oversaturated with a lot of people that don't know what they're doing. And so you have to, but you still have a big palette to work from, and so now you actually have all these different paths that you can follow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, and also Jonathan Eris and I work with the same Ableton programs and the same software. You know, inputs and stuff like that, and effects, and we don't differ much from those. And if we do, we just render it down as an audio file to work with it. But it always gets changed. It's just so much easier when you're working off the palette of the same person. We use the same sounds. I think he probably has a different library of sounds than I do. But I don't really use a lot of libraries because there's not much, unless it sounds really cool. I can't get that.
Yeah. I think the big, like, where it really changed is, funny enough, me living in Berlin and working here, my day job where I make money is how can I best put it? I build integratable systems for buildings and homes. And even nowadays, my latest thing is I'm doing a lot of video conference setups and video casting setup integrations into that. And one of my customers was none other than the CEO of Native Instruments.
Yeah.
And I told him that when I was setting up, because I was doing his private home, I said,
he gave us a deal. He gave us
I said, when I'm doing your private home, I want everything for free. And he says, what do you mean everything? I mean, everything. and so I got behind me. I got behind me the biggest Native Instrument keyboard. I got the entire complete. I sent one to Terrence, another buddy of mine. So it worked out really well. And it was the first time I think we had the same palette to work on, specifically from afar. And we're now going back to 2014, maybe 13. I don't know when that started.
Yeah. It was something like that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I just talked to him a couple days ago and he's like, I sold the company.
Yes.
he's retired now pretty much, but so the deals are no longer there, but the influences, maybe we'll see if they come out with anything better and coming up in the future. I don't know. We'll see.
I do. That's freaking awesome too. And yeah, it is huge to be able to work on the same palette. I used to battle with my guitar player in XTS all the time because he was big on Fruity Loops. Like that was his thing. And like he knew it. No, don't get me wrong. He knew it inside and out. I didn't mess around with it enough to really see value in it. So I was using like what was it? Reason. So but I was like, but hey, guess what? Like there's a little program that's you can use inside of it called Rewire, and you can send me stuff from Fruity, and then I can sit there and utilize it and use my sounds and stuff like that I've got in Reason, and we work with that. And but what I've also noticed too is like, when you start bouncing around between multiple different platforms or having one member that's writing on Studio One, and then it's like, okay, well now I got to bring this into either Ableton or FL20 or whatever that you're using. You can, those tempos can change like from whatever is going on in one program to the next. So this could come out at 140. It is. And so, like, I remember getting mad at one of my guitar players, Shadowson, because he sent me the guitar track, and I was like, "What were you listening to? Because this is nothing on point with the song."
It's a real nightmare,
dude. I think we did that in 2004, and then we quit. We ran away from that because like it worked. It did. I think in 2004, like I was doing FL Studios at the times, it was just Fruity Loops, and I actually did a lot of Cubase and Sonar, that kind of stuff. And Terrence was more into Logic and Reason, and that's where we collaborate. Because Terrence was like, "Ah, that's what Prodigy uses. We're gonna do that." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't. I got it. Like I did.
You know what changed my mind to Ableton? When I met Skrillex at Lana McQuay in Toronto, and he was outside, and for some reason I started talking to him, and he filled me in. This is before anything clicked for him. He said, "Yeah, I'm working with this guy named Deadmau5 here," and I knew him. I knew Deadmau5 as a DJ. I knew that name because he went to the clubs around town and he would play. And he was okay success. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. I know who the guy is." And I said, "So what do you use?" And he says, "I use Live, Ableton Live." So I thought, "What's that?" And then Eris years later is talking to me about it. "Yeah, you got to use Ableton, man. You got to use Ableton Live. It's so good. You can do so much." So it took me, my learning curve was real slow. a year and a half to figure it out. Like to figure it out, not like figure it out, like know the machine inside and out, know every button.
Well,
year and a half.
Big time, man. I find that coming from the classical DAW and switching over to Ableton is not easy, to tell you the truth. It took me a while. It was a bit of resistance. It wasn't until about Ableton 5 where I started to hear it from other people. There was my friend Jairus from Ottawa. He was big on that. He played with me inside. Yeah, he played with me in Cyanotic, and then Cyanotic introduced me to Jamie Duffy from Acumen Nation, and they were already all on Ableton, and that was the first time, like when I was touring, seeing what they're doing with it specifically from the studio to the stage. And that's where I realized that there was power there, because it wasn't just a tool for, with a couple drum machines. Like for me, I grew up with Rhythm Doctor drum machines, right?
Yeah.
Or Doctor Rhythm, whatever they were, like those old boss things, right?
Yeah,
and keyboards.
660 DR 660.
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, it's funny. I sampled the whole thing and sold it eventually, and that was the end of it. And for me, going to Fruity Loops in like 2002, back when I was doing Born into Oblivion, it was an easy transition because it looks like a drum machine. I can tap it out and I can use it just like that. And that was my mental move there. But for someone like Terrence coming from big studios in Vancouver, and Reason made more sense because you can kind of like patch things and
dude, being able to toggle rack and flip everything back and rewire things, that was so cool.
Big time.
Well, you know who used it. You know who used that mostly on the Fat of the Lamb was Prodigy. That was their go-to. And Logic
with Reason, you mean? Reason,
yeah,
right?
with Reason. Yeah, that's a lot of their sounds and how they flip things around and cut. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, they used that.
I remember seeing an old program back in the day that the guy said, go back to the guy that showed me how to write music and everything. He started out on an old, and I would basically compare this to the Oregon Trail of music programs, just very black and white, hardly, if any, color coordination to anything. It's all like cube graphs and everything, and it was called Player Pro.
Sure.
And he showed me that, and I was like, I will never write music ever. I tried messing with it once, and I didn't know how to drop drums in. I didn't know where like record was. I mean, and I was still new to it at the time. And then when he showed me, because I used to, like, you're kind of like we were saying, with like the hands-on gear and like drum machines and stuff like that, when I got into using Reason, and then you had the redrum and everything. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. I got this now. Okay, so I can at least start off by making some drums, and then using I think I used GarageBand for like some, like a lot. I got a lot of really good piano sounds until I started realizing like how to actually go and get more VSTs and more sounds and break away from like just trying to tweak presets and stuff. It's it all goes in with the learning curve of it all. And and I've been in Terrence's shoes with a few different programs. Like, just either the learning curve took so long that I was just getting irritated with it. I was like, I'm just gonna go back to what I'm used to, or and it does take time, if because if you have a bunch of different artists that are using these and they're making these albums, and you're hearing like really good production, but you also know that the bare origin comes from like the creation of these sounds, whether they're preset or whether they're created. Like, all you got to do is just fight the learning curve and get it done.
Yeah. Well, I find like Ableton for me is it's great for taking that idea and putting it down. So it's actually more of a writing software. I find it to be really good for that. Anybody who's making music, I think that they can appreciate Ableton for that reason. For things like if I'm doing multi-track drumming and stuff like that, I'll actually hop over to like Reaper or Pro Tools, and then I'll import the tracks and work with them later on in Ableton that way. I find Ableton has a couple, like it's actually really hard because like I have other people that I work with who exclusively only do Pro Tools, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass, specifically when you're dealing with tempo changes and time signature changes and you're trying to get that mapped up. It sucks. And that's something I think that needs to be worked on in the future. But for now, I think that at least if you've got both of those systems on your computer running, a proper linear DAW with Ableton, you can do anything now. It's unbelievable. Even the stock stuff in Ableton is fantastic.
So good. And you don't need to really buy any extension programs. they're already really good. And Ableton is a tank. It's got areas that I've owned. So one of the things that I do is I find people that know the program, like anything, and I just go to them, pay them whatever they want, and they give me tutorials and I learn it. I mean, that's with a lot of things.
Mhm.
So that's what I did. I went to I found a guy that I liked how he taught. So I went and learned what he knew. So at least I touched the total scope of Ableton Live. I had touched it, as opposed to trying to wing it, man, you know, trying to wing it everywhere I'm going on that program, because there's so much you can do. It is literally way more than you need. There's so many ways you can work. And it's the same with a lot of these programs like Logic. Fruity Loops is probably the biggest selling program in the world. And it's vast, it's very vast. And I remember looking at it in the early 2000s.
I remember it being the biggest downloaded at the time.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's where they all started. That's where they all started.
Huge.
So, you know, that's where they all started. And, you know, I used to have to download it. I was dirt broke most of my, you know.
I think 242 said that they would never buy a music making program ever, and I think they were really big on just only pirating.
Yeah, well, sure, but the thing is you can only do that so long, and you know the capabilities of what these programs can do now that you want to pay for them. And for me, paying for your equipment and paying for other people's talent, and it's just all a part of what you need to do. Because I'll tell you something, man. Here's a good rule. Here's a good rule. Whatever you want to do, just figure out how much it's going to cost you and pay for it.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you're going to pay for it one way or the other. There is no free rides. One way or the other, you're going to end up paying for it.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, too, like you get that understanding the value of, like you were saying, with like paying members and paying for music programs down to the instruments that you have, and then also the demand of value. So the reason why you buy the programs, the reason why you buy the guitar, the reason why you pay these certain people. So there's an expectation both ways. So it really works out as a whole, because, you know, like you were saying, you know, if you don't, then you do get what you pay for, and then that becomes an issue later.
Yeah, it does.
There you go.
It does, yeah. And you know, it's nice to be acknowledged for your talents, and you know, payment's one of them.
100%.
Nothing beats, you know, cold hard cash. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, and all you got to pay for all this shit. We're not rich, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everybody's got the same bills, and, you know, if their talent's needed and required, you can put it together. I mean, you know, it's nice to have that, to where there's an understanding amongst like members or whoever's bringing you in that, hey, I see your talent to the degree of it's worth paying for, and, you know, putting it out as a collective for what you're putting out. So, you know, as a band,
you know, I'm gonna if you're good at something, someone will pay you for it. That's it. If you're good at it, somebody was going to pay you for it. Yep. And if you're not good at it, nobody's going to pay you for it. If you don't have a good song, nobody's going to pay you for it.
Unless your advertisement's really good.
Right, but then you end up paying for it.
You're paying for it still.
That's right.
Still paying for it.
Well, I know that bands all the time too.
You can't get away from it.
There is a such thing as artificial growth, you know, so you can literally invest, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars into advertisement and get the numbers. Like, the numbers will be there, but the actual value of what comes back at you monetarily, like, you're already digging your own hole.
Well, I'm gonna give you an example of that, and you're gonna know it. Jonathan, you're gonna know it. Eris hasn't got a fucking clue what I'm talking about. Is Island Boys. Right? The Island Boy.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
100%. But you know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's
No, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right. I know. Don't worry. Don't want to know.
All right.
This terrible virus has only stayed within the United States so far.
Yeah.
It hasn't made its way to Germany, and the Island Boys has not become a freaking vaccination that you need to get for it. They take that as a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's it.
No.
All right.
Not at all.
All right.
Once you see it,
Yeah,
you
there's-
can't unsee it.
That's like my friend was telling me about Baby Metal a while ago. He was on tour with them,
Oh,
and he's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's like
Baby Metal, yeah.
I had never heard of this, and he's like, dude, it's like a car wreck. You just have to look. You know, it's right. Looking away is weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, I
And
presume
it's
it's
all
something
bad.
on that level.
Yeah, that Baby Metal is terrifying. Like it's it is like an infection.
That was a boat that wasn't meant to float, and it got pushed way out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it comes from a culture that you don't quite understand. So that's the intrigue.
It's
And then
paid
you
by
think,
our culture. I don't know.
And then you think to yourself, are they actually buying this? You know, are they
Because
I get that a lot still.
I love J-rock music. Like, you know, freaking, I remember even back in like the mid '90s, you know, I was listening to like, you know, De La Quartz and Duran Gray back when like the J-rock scene was very glam style. So I mean, they had the big dresses and like they look very, I mean, still probably do to this day, but look very feminine and stuff. And like even now, you know, I still love Duran Gray. I don't think De La Quartz is a band anymore. The Gazette is a really big one that I like as well. And but they're like heavy metal, like they're pretty much like the Mansons of Japan for the most part.
Okay.
But you know, very talented. I was trying to go see him like this was like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I seen they were only doing like 4 or 5 dates across the United States, and I could be due to like certain taxes or anything like that. Because I know with some bands, when I was on tour with XTS, we got into Revolver magazine, and for us thinking of an industrial band from Indiana getting in Revolver magazine, we're like, I don't know how this happened, but that's awesome.
Right.
And we were supposed to be, or we were on this tour, but Kitty was supposed to be the headliner. Well,
Yeah.
Kitty couldn't get into the United States because they still owed the IRS like 40 grand in back taxes from their last tour that they had to do. And, you know, a lot
Toronto,
of
right?
Yeah. So a lot of
right.
people don't realize, like in the music industry, like especially for out of like country, you know, bands, not even out of state, just like from another country, like to come over here and the expense that it costs to not only play, but also what they're going to have to pay to be able to, because I mean, you're coming over and you're monetizing in another country. And for the longest time, I think the US was the one that got away with not having to do that for a while. Like if you were from the US going out of the country, you didn't have to pay taxes, but any other country coming into the United States. Yeah.
It's brutal. You know, it's funny, starting off, like we all do, you know, we start off with rock and roll and punk and metal and whatnot, or something, you know, of the line, you know, on the lines of just getting little shows, going out with your buddies and playing. Once you start hopping borders, it's everything starts to change, specifically when you learn that you're either going to do it right or you're going to do it really wrong. And I've seen too many musicians suffer that, you know, the 10-year ban, 5-year ban here and there, or friends of mine from Germany going and doing full tours, working in backline, working like a stagehand or sound engineers and so on and so forth, and having to pay full taxes in both countries because they didn't do their paperwork properly. And in the US, it's brutal. You got to go to the tax man in every state you've played in, and you got to get your papers in line for that. So it's unfortunately it's a brutal thing that you have to just keep in line before you actually believe that you're going to make any money doing that.
Oh yeah, and with like the current age of like you know, digital technology, streaming and stuff. I mean, there's pros and cons with the current day and age. I mean, there's so many ways now for artists to be able to monetize, even if incrementally, be able to monetize more than they ever could in the past 30 to 40 years, and even being with under a label, because we've seen that, you know, I think it was the same year, Metallica and 9 Inch Nails, I want to say it was like 2015, 2016. I could be wrong on the year time frame, but they got the rights back, like the full rights back to their music in the same year, and you look at all the big tours and all the big arena stuff that they were doing, and all the publicity that they've had over the years. And when you become a cash cow from somebody, they'll throw that back. If you got a fire going, they're like, how much gasoline do you want for this? How many sticks do you want on the fire? And you'll take it. You'll take all the sticks and all the gasoline or whatever. But at the same point in time, you're not looking at the cost of gas that's at the back end of that contract.
This is something that Rammstein over here did really well. I'm not sure if they only did this for Berlin or if it's all of Germany, but they have exclusive rights to their shows, meaning you can only buy tickets from their website, and they are the one putting the entire show and everything together in Germany when they're playing it here, which is great when you see them booking out like 3 days in a row at the biggest arena over here, and it's like all their heavy, that's their heavy lifting and sweat that goes into that's actually paying off now. So I've heard that they've
that's a great model too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they got up to that level, but Germany's a very different, it's a very different machine. And I'll give you an example that sets apart a lot of, I think, European bands from North American bands. Most European bands have jobs. Like the members have actual jobs that have nothing to do with music. And we commonly get 6 weeks of vacation here, no matter what job you pretty much have. And that means that most of the bands that you're seeing, like, favorite band of mine, Wolfheart from Finland, he's a gardener or a landscaping guy, sorry. And so this is the thing, is that when you see a lot of these bands, they're taking 2 months off in the summer, and then they're going to Wacken, they're going to open air festivals, they're hitting up all the main big arteries, and then they'll jump over, they'll do something in England and Australia, the US, and come home. and then they'll write an album while they're financing everything themselves. And it's a very different structure. And I know a lot of bands over here that do that. Even specifically friends of mine from New Zealand, they come up to Germany, they create a home base, and every 2-3 months they go out and tour in one direction for 2 weeks and come back. And within the course of a year, they do an entire European tour.
See, and that's always good to do too. I mean, because a lot of times, like I know here in the U.S., like I mean, I know you guys get like you're saying 6 weeks out there. I know what's like main, I guess, average income jobs in the U.S. It's usually like 2 weeks. Like so it's a lot smaller. I know there's a lot of musicians that are like contractors, construction workers, because or they work at really, really big places to where if they're not there, they're not not saying they're not an asset to the company, but their presence not being there is not hindering any growth or income coming in, or revenue coming in for that company. So they'll or they'll just take smaller end jobs or whatever. So it's like, oh well, if I get fired, then whatever. So
that's a big thing. Is most of the people that I've worked with, specifically in the industrial metal scene, that's exactly what they did. They just quit their job every time they went on tour and got a new one when they came home. Right?
Yeah, and once again too, you look at things that also, like, it works for so long, but then at the same point in time, it's like, okay, well, if I create, I have a mentality for like the first 3 to 5 years of being a musician with my band and everything, that we're gonna go, we're gonna hit hard, or like, screw my job, and you take on as much as you can do, and then you start hitting the wrong moves and the wrong decisions, and like the cleanup from like what the outcome of that was. And it's like, okay, now I know what to do. Now I know that maybe that was a dumb idea, although I still need to have my head in the right space regarding the music, my brand, and pushing that forward. But I can plan it out into a map, like doing, like you were saying, 2 weeks out here, and then whatever out here, and kind of span it out, and then use these different outlets and sources to have like little root systems going into like Spotify, monetizing from YouTube, and just anything, and then looking within your own band and seeing who's good at what. And so instead of maybe paying a graphic design artist and a PR person, whatever, if you got someone that's an extrovert, mass networker, then there's your PR person. Then and then if you got someone that's good at graphic design, that's also your drummer, then you got your flyers. And so I mean, you can utilize tools within your own band if you stop looking at each other like you're the drummer, you're the
huge. That's a big part. Making sure that you always need, I think this is something that's often overlooked, you need the social butterfly in every band. There has to be at least one. Right. Yeah. Like I've been in bands where the singer was just so good at making friends that we never paid for hotels, because he always met someone at the show that let us crash at their place, and that was just like a thing, right? And and that's one of these things where it's like, not only is it nice to not have to pay for the hotel rooms, not have to deal with that shit, but at the same time, just the social network it actually opened up later. Some of these people were friggin' like awesome people, right? And musicians as well that we were able to collaborate with later on.
Yeah, and especially touring too. I mean, you create that like family network with like your fans, and they, they're sitting there like, oh,
Huge.
the guys came back and I gave them a place to sleep for the night or whatever and stuff, and you keep this, it's not fan bond anymore. It's a touring family bond and stuff, and you can do that, throughout the country or wherever. So when you go back out again, it's like, hey, it's not like, hey, we come visit. It's like, hey, we want to come visit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the US is awesome for that, I must say. Like, there are a couple things I really like about touring in the US, and that is I find that the people are so quick to just let you crash on their couch. It's like I find that's I think that's like a thing over there. And
you're famous? Yes, you can stay at my house.
Exactly. Call the kids, tell them to go somewhere else for the night. So the other thing is even in medium-sized, small medium-sized venues, your sound systems are typically awesome. Over here in Europe, everybody's playing with in-ear monitors because it's just you can't bear the sound on stage, right? So and you got to start playing large stages, and even still, your sound for you as a musician, you're just never going to get a decent mix for yourself, right?
Dude, I've always been kind of like, I got to get back into it, but I've always been, even on like the tours and arena shows that we've done when I was in Motograder, we never used in-ear monitors. When I was in XPS, we used in-ear monitors up until I stopped using them because we opened up for a God module at the Fantasy in Ohio, in Cleveland. And we're on stage. I'm trying to remember if we got a sound check or not. We might have, or maybe it was just a line check. But anyway, our in-ear monitors are in, and we've got the alien ear ones, and so they're just jammed all in our freaking ear. And everything's going, lights are going. We go on stage, and we're performing, jumping around, like I'm screaming and headbanging, and I'm pointing at other members, and they're headbanging and rocking out and everything like that. And then at the end of the song, our manager's going like this with a flashlight. And I run over there, I yank this thing out of my ear, and I'm like, what? And he's like, dude, nothing came through the speakers. And I was like, what do you mean?
Oh, man.
Like, it looked like
you guys were like
seizing out for about 3.5 minutes.
Like French mime on stage. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, do we even finish the set? Like, do we just walk off? And so ever since then, I'm terrified to use ear monitors. I was like, I'm going to use oratory ear all day.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Well, like I said, man, there are places over here where I dare you to try. We're talking like concrete walls left, right, and behind you, and the stages are so small that
I just need the sound guy that's like, hey, is it coming through back there? Can you hear? Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, let's go.
There we go.
The fear is gone now.
Yeah. There you go, man. But that's a good story. I wish you got that one on film.
Oh my god! Probably somewhere in some archive. Been awesome. I'm gonna have to get hold of the guys again from the band. There might be somebody in that camp's got one, because I know either my guitar player's girlfriend she was always recording and stuff. So we before like content was a real thing. Like we had just so much content that was just dumped on external hard drives. There's a couple different music videos that we tried putting together that we spent the whole day shooting, whatever, but we did have the right editing software to make it look cool. And so it's like, okay, well that's done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Man, yeah. We did that too. Terrence and I, we recorded an entire video at his friend's farm in like this weird silo. Yeah. I've never seen any footage from that.
No, because they gave it to Dane and he fucking lost it.
Oh yeah, I guess that's what happens. Yeah, some people are just like black holes.
He's the black hole.
There you go.
No, maybe he's changed. He's changed in like the years, but yeah, man. I don't know.
I haven't heard from him in a decade, so I think nothing comes in and nothing goes out. I think that's what's happening now.
Yeah, wow.
He used to be a guitarist in Model M back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was great, and just I don't know, man.
He was good on stage.
Great on stage. Yeah.
Great on stage. And that's the thing, is that I think that it's important for people to acknowledge what they're good at.
Yeah.
And stick to that. Right? Like, not just stick to that, but I mean, like, don't try to overshadow some other thing that you're really not that good at. Right.
Yeah.
It just Exactly.
It's not a good place to learn, like when you're out there, just keep it to yourself and learn it before you put it out there, or have somebody else do it. It's just somebody is more proficient at it.
There you go. That's what you were saying before. You pay for it one way or the other.
One way or the other, you're going to pay for it. It's true.
Exactly. And so now, unfortunately, we are going to have to get this wrapped up because we are coming close on that hour mark or whatever. So I do want to open this up to you guys or whatever for any closing statements. Eris, anything that you want to push out, promo, talk about, or anything in your closing thoughts?
Ooh, I mean, Model M related or general?
It doesn't matter, either one.
It doesn't matter. All right. Let's just put it this way. I think next year is gonna have it's gonna have a very different energy for musicians, for music, for us, big time. I have a couple projects on the roll right now that are really gonna be picking up momentum, and we'll see how that actually turns out. But I definitely feel like there's a good, like, from a production point of view, from the music that I'm making, from the music that we're making. I don't know. It just feels like I'm tapping into something subconscious. I don't know, but it's coming out proper.
Yeah, I would have to say that I agree with Eris. We are going into a better place in 2022 as far as music goes. Certainly, we're going to go on to tour. I'm working with Jonathan right now as far as touring goes, and we're going to be producing more music, Model M and Eris together. And we already have stuff pretty much nailed down on what we're doing. And so there's a new album coming, and followed with the tours before or after that's done. Still up in the air, still weird out there, but things are opening. And I perceive them to be opening more and more every day.
And on the Model M front, there's something that I'd like to. I mentioned to Terrence before. I got the go from him. Like, it's one of these things where Terrence, in the end, Model M's his baby and has his mix and his flavor and everything on it. But next year, I'm going to be putting together a couple songs and having them mastered by my guy over here in Sweden. It's going to be a different sounding Model M. At least we're going to be putting out an EP in the beginning. There's going to be a different side of Model M coming out in the near future, where it's going to be more my production with my guy in Sweden over here, and I'm looking forward to see how that translates.
I'm totally okay with that. I think that'd be a good idea. And Eris always has a lot of say in Model M as well, and he's a big part of it, a really big part of it. The best songs are written with him, I think.
Well, it's funny because sometimes I find that things just don't make the cut, not because it isn't good, but because there's a different flavor. There's a palette that we need to keep in mind when we're making the album or even the songs in context. And this time we're going to do things a little bit differently, I think. So it's cool now that you have a great live band to go out onto the road. I think that Model M's flavor has actually been improved because of that, because of the live energy of actually, at least in the rehearsal space and all that stuff, and being able to play once in a while. It really has now pushed a life energy into the music, injected it back into the music that's been absent for about 10 years. I must say.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, because that's what we definitely look forward to. As far as like with JP Management, working with Model M, and I can't wait to get this tour together with obviously we got the Weapons of Mass Disruption tour with Model M, Pigweed, Sister Kill Cycle, so that'll be a good run. And I also think definitely with the new album coming out, this will be number 9, the 9 Lives album.
Really? Big time.
The 9 Lives album, that'd be in 9 songs.
Right there you go.
I love it, dude.
And then we'll throw a tour out for that. 9
Lives.
Hey, for all the Kabbalists out there, you could say it's one before God.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, guys, hey, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Eris, thank you for taking your time all the way from Germany.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do this. Yeah, it's great speaking with you. We definitely need to do this again. I definitely want to do a follow-up, and that way we can go more in depth. Maybe do even a gear talk one that we can drop here on the page too, and we can do some cross promotion there.
This was a pretty big gear talk.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
mean,
that's what I'm
because
saying. I was like, man, this actually like this needs to go on YouTube, like this, you know.
If you'd like, actually, in the future, just to keep in mind, I have a full-on video casting system. We can actually stream live from my system.
Dude, that would be awesome because we could definitely either do that from either our page, the modeling page, but you know, through somewhere to where we can get it and we build a whole thing behind that. Hell yeah, dude! I definitely think we should do that.
I got buttons over here I can push, right?
Oh, now you're getting all fancy with it, man. Like,
got it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like, I got the cues up and everything.
Yeah, that's how we roll nowadays, huh? We're not playing anymore.
Oh no, it's got to be pro level content now.
That's right. Dude, that's the big thing today. It's not like, again, going back 10 years ago, content today is pro level. You're seeing people pull things together out of their bedroom, and it's
we are in that DIY universe right now.
Huge. That is well said. That's actually one of the bigger things.
More so.
Yeah.
It's going to be even more. We're talking to like home agriculture.
Yeah. Dude, I'll do a little drop on some of the new technology I'm using. I just picked up some new stuff from Audio Assault, and my God, the Neural DSP, same thing. Like the bass tones that I'm getting now, just from my living room, is on another level, right? And so pro content and pro sound is all it's coming together. It's merging, and I feel that for the first time with the sound that I've always wanted to go for, I can get it, and it's like really over the last couple of years this has happened.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely only been within the past few couple of years, because even going back, even 5 to 7 years ago, it wasn't even really there, and you'd spend so much time, like either you would have to find like a really really good producer, that knew what they were talking about, and not just finding a producer that's going to let you come in and like record and be like, okay, I'm going to make an album for you guys, like you got more than just. And you're not just a recording engineer, like you're the producer and stuff. And I think that's what you got now on YouTube, is you got so many people, because I think the bad thing with like social media is it's given too many people the access to have an opinion, but to come off with pro level content to say it's legitimate.
That's right. And it's honestly, it's a good stress in the sense that I think it puts a little bit of stress on everybody to make better content because you have to keep up.
Right. Yeah, right.
Right. You got some kid pulling stuff out of his living room that's just like on another level, and here we are making music for like 20, 30 years. We got to keep up. And it's one of these things where we have all this experience with the analog technology, but times are changing, and they're changing very rapidly, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So that's the part that I want to embrace.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad thing. They always say, I think it was Tim Ferriss, I think, said this, that there's two things that kids nowadays, are this younger generation, and really mainly on like the YouTube, like that. So I guess you can almost call them like the social media generation, that you can't Google history or experience. So you can be a couple years into it, and you maybe just have an ear for music or know how to work around with certain programs, but you haven't had the history of trial and error, knowing what works, how it works, and then why this works with this specific style and not this one, and then the history of doing it for so long, of understanding that trial and error. So I see a worry with like bands and producers just going in and just it's good to come in hungry, but if you bite off so much that you end up choking on what you just bit, that's when it becomes an issue.
I'll tell you, one of my biggest dreads of starting a new project was always realizing that I had to figure out the sound I was going to do, right? And what I meant is like, what amp am I going to use? The settings, the keyboards, the all that stuff, like the presets in my DAWs and all that. Like it was just like that was actually overwhelming at a point. It was overwhelming enough to say, I'm just going to play live shows for the next year. it was right. It was a thing. It really was. And so like with my band Krillistic over here in Berlin, it's now at that level where, like I mentioned, we're walking away from our amplifiers and the big studios. The last big studio album we did, Krillistic did, was in Berlin over here. They put up proper money. The thing sounds amazing. And, we're going to do it in my living room this time, and in his living room, because we're fully confident we'll be able to do better this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Big time.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Words?
Great. You guys pretty much covered everything. It was enjoyable. I really had a good time.
No, I really enjoyed this, and like I said, we definitely
You
should definitely be
guys
doing
are
this more.
fantastic people. You guys are good guys.
So explain
Well,
it
same
over
here.
here for the social media dolt. How are you gonna compile this this video and audio stuff in order to put it out as content? Because Terrence and Nina tried to explain it to me, but dude, I've never used social media. It's really not my thing.
So with this specific Zoom interview or whatever, I'm gonna
Yep.
do some slight cutting, but I'm not gonna cut a lot. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna cut like hardly any out of this, minus like a few small little hair parts. And I think it was because I was getting a phone call and it muted a thing for a split second. That's the only thing I'm probably gonna cut out here.
I didn't even notice.
Well, because the content here, I think it's good, and I think there's really nothing that really needs to be edited. It flowed very well. I mean, it was very cohesive. The conversation was good. So, I mean, honestly, I'll probably just end up creating like just a little intro clip for it, and then run it, and then throw like some ad stuff behind it, and I'll post it. I'll either send it to Terrence and he can send it to you, or I can send you a Google Drive link so that way you can check it out as well. Like I know you don't have yeah, and then I'll post it on there, throw some ad budget behind it. And honestly, if I can get it polished up the way I see it in my head getting done, I'm going to throw it up on the JP Management Interactive YouTube channel. Now, I haven't launched the YouTube channel, but the YouTube channel is going to be set up for, and going back on the podcast thing, is I'm also going to be doing a podcast for JP Management where it's going to be business bangers. So I'm going to be interviewing people like Jay Gordon, just higher ups in the music industry, and bringing them in, because I found a TV studio here in Santa Cruz that's like 8 hours for like $200. I'm going to be renting this place out to bring these people in to do probably like 3 or 4 segments. And then just, for the fans and like the upcoming artists watching or whatever, they can hear from the, whoever big artist or producer. It's not really going to be solidified on just having a main artist as a musician or something like that. I mean, I'll bring in producers, people from record labels, just getting multiple different perspectives. So because I think that there's so much I guess fabrication from what people looked at and how we looked at like magazines growing up and everything like that. You saw Skinny Puppy on stage, and it looks like a playground on stage, but everybody's playing instruments. And so you see all the fans and stuff like that. And then you just be like, okay, this is, what it is. This is making it big. And it's like there's a lot of other elements into that. And so I think the younger generation, and even if they're not younger generations, the bands that are just going to try and come out and do something here this year within the next few years, it is more crucial than ever that you understand the industry now, because the old ways of what used to work have been done for about 10 to 15 years. But there is this new era of what social media is allowing artists to do regarding monetization, getting your music just out there and spread out, and creating a real community around your brand that you really couldn't do outside of magazines and MTV2 and whatever limited sources of getting your music out there was from the 80s to early 2000s. And so now with YouTube and understanding that yes, there is going to be like there's more fish in the sea now than ever before when it comes to like YouTube and all these different video channels of finding music. I mean, I've seen people find artists on TikTok, and these bands are blowing up on their streams because people are finding their stuff on a 30-second clip. So people are paying attention, but it also shows that the attention span of an average person is 30 seconds. And for a goldfish, it's like 45, and the goldfish are winning. So we have a problem somewhere.
I agree. It's funny, the podcast, dude, I wish you luck on that. I started doing mine earlier this year. Like I said, I've only put out a dozen episodes, and within that dozen episodes, one of the guys that I actually interviewed, we're making music together now, right? And a couple of the other, like I met another dude from Poland, amazing musician, and it's really, really a great way to actually just network and to be able to just sit down and actually talk about, like you were saying, like I think that music is so dynamic, and it's not just like the industry. It's like everything about it is really, really dynamic now, and it's constantly changing. And if you're not a part of that dialogue, it'll go past you, and it'll be real quick too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. By the time you recognize something that you've been trying to understand for 3 years,
It's gone.
it's already yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's brutal. I thought the high point, honestly, for me was like when MySpace was the king,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because that was the first time that we were able to. I was on a tour that went like garbage. It just there was no promotion. We were showing up at clubs and they didn't know we were supposed to play that night, like the club owners, right? Or the club owners they open the door and no one's coming in. And we were able to get on a MySpace in a city that we had never been to and get like 50 people in there within like 10 hours. Like within 10 hours notice. And so that and it was the first time that I saw real indie movement, like real good, the ability, because you can't go onto YouTube or Google and say show me a band that has put out a video in the last week that has less than 50,000 views. Won't find it, right? And that's, I think that's a very that's something that I've been trying to crack for a long time. And maybe you have any advice to that. How do you find music that has that's not popular yet and has just been made? I don't know if there is a way.
See, with right now, like that's where the advertising kind of comes in and everything gets kind of buried, and I think you're running into more of having to have a shovel than anything when it comes to searching for things like that. I mean, there's been times where I've even so like taking instance, looking for like prospecting leads or clients, so like looking for bands, for example, happen to look at show flyers or festival flyers, from bands that you can look across the names, and that's the one hard thing is like you have to go by almost name and then go from there and see, okay, now I got to trail back to your music, now I got to see what are you trying to present visually as well as via audio. And going online, I remember, you talked about MySpace days. So I guess going back to around that same time, maybe a little bit beforehand, when you had Yahoo search, for example. So you'd type in Marilyn Manson, Skinny Puppy, and then you might get 3 that come up on the related searches, and that's it. That's all you got. Just 3 related bands, unless you typed in. That's where you kind of saw keywords, AdWords kind of unknowingly start gaining their appeal and growth. It's like, okay, well, how do I put in an AdWord or a keyword to give me a different selection of artists? And so, and it's very, very similar to that now, but there's just so much, and you don't really know what to because if you type it in logically, finding artists with under 50,000 views within the past week of this style, it's unfortunately there's algorithms like that, and from everything to Amazon to Craigslist. So for the fact that it's not on YouTube, I don't get that either. I agree with you.
I know. I'd love to, because I love finding bands that are still making music in a raw manner, right? I've always loved that, like I was saying before, this last month I've for some reason been listening to a lot of Carnivore. It's like a band, like an album from the early mid 80s, and I still think it has an awesome sound, and I find it's hard to actually find that, to find rawness. I think that it's something that you won't find in a related search. It's something you got to know the context and really go for it, or be a part of a community that's sharing that information already, right? But like I said before, I'm a bit of a social media adult, so I'm not part of many of these groups. So,
yeah. Well, no, and that's not a bad thing. That's definitely not a bad thing. If I didn't have to have half the social media, I honestly wouldn't. But just in today's day and age, from being a musician and promotions, and then doing it's just unfortunately that's where the easiest way of it's like the LinkedIn for finding fans and stuff like that, because you can go on Facebook, you can create an account, you can put out content and things like that, but it does take time to grow even a small fan base. And with Facebook it's so quick, and I kind of touching back on what you were saying on how fast the industry moves. It's also the equivalent of how fast our timelines move between Instagram or Facebook. I mean, people will scroll and scroll and scroll, and it has to visually catch their attention for them to stop. It has to, a lot of times if it's music, it has to be playing immediately in the scroll. There are companies that will literally put out sponsored ads that if it has music to it, when you scroll with your finger, it'll immediately start playing. So it'll hit your ear and be like, oh, wait, there's music. So it might get you to stop and roll back and see what it was. They're little ad triggers in a sense. So, but that comes into understanding how do you do target market and audience when you don't have an audience? So
That's right.
you kind of like get the initial people that come in. That I saw a sponsored post on Facebook. I saw you come up in my YouTube related video, links or however they found you and everything. But a lot of that comes from ad dollars. I mean, there's a lot of bands that used to believe back in the day that, oh, well, there's going to be that one promoter that's just going to see us play. And then once they see us play, we're going to whatever. And, as much as we all know that that is not a thing, people are utilizing that now because they're seeing all these social media sites become these catalysts for these artists. Some artists that are spewing from 30-second TikTok clips, and a lot of those songs that I'm hearing all over the place, I have no clue who these artists are. And I don't know if this is me getting old or me just not having an ear to the ground on certain things. But when it comes to what's popular, it's not based on the community of artists anymore. It's based on the fans. Like somehow, like from what we're trying to do, I guess in a sense, if you're under a label and you got music and you're trying to appeal to a fan base or a following, and that's why certain music is sounding that way, or your label's trying to push out a certain sound out of you. It's now flipped to where now the following of the fans that you do or don't even have yet are going to be the judgment of how far you can be taken without, any type of monetization behind it. And people don't really listen to it that much. I mean, you see people that have Spotify and Pandora. I mean, I used to be a sales supervisor for Sirius XM for their sales team. And, people have songs all over Sirius XM radio. And a lot of times it's like having a DJ play your music. I mean, there's really no big announcement about your songs unless you had like the dashboard panel that told you what the song was. I mean, you're just going to hear it go in one ear and out the other.
And that's it. Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, and that's like thousands of dollars that people just pay to have that, So, it's like you want to find some type of organic way to be like, hey, this is us. We're unknown, but you're hearing about it. But this is me with the name across it, and repetition is key. That's why when you listen to the radio, it was always on like a 3-hour rotation, because how the songs get stuck in your head is because you hear them over and over and over and over and over again. They can only do that with 3 hours. That's all it took for us back then.
Yeah, they say in the science world you gotta publish or perish, and nowadays they're saying if you're not in the feeds, you don't exist. So it's the same. It's the same thing taken from one industry and put over into the other, right? It's not any different. Whereas I think that when we were younger, it was a bit more about actually creating I don't know, like not a culture, but definitely a movement. That was the big thing.
Yeah.
You generate a movement.
Movement.
It still is. It still is, but what I mean, like that, even that word, I don't even think I've heard that in a long time.
Yeah, that's my feeling. What you just said is the word. I mean, the word in itself. I was a part of you think of a culture, a movement. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you look at the Grateful Dead. I mean, all the fans of the Grateful Dead, they called them deadheads.
Exactly.
Slipknot, they called them maggots. I mean, they built a culture and a little community, internal, music society out of their fan base. And before, like, people were sharing pictures of themselves or whatever all over, they wore they'd go buy a shirt of their favorite band, and they'd wear it to sleep, they'd wear it to school 5 days in a row, they'd wear it out on the weekends. Like they were your that was your promotion market. You had to have merch in these retail stores where people could go and buy. So there was the talk of the town.
It was a sigil. It was a big part of life at the time. It was one of these funny things. I think that's what's also a little bit different over here in Europe. In Europe, you find people like, I remember in North America how strict things were to a degree with, either it's like you're into death metal, or you're into hip hop, or you're into something of with a cultural flavor, and there wasn't a lot of crossing between that. Whereas over here in Europe, I find that a lot of people, they'll go out to a drum and bass event, the next day they're out going to see Jamiroquai, and then they're going back to a death metal concert, and it's like a thing over here that's actually very accepted. So.
But anyway. That's the cool thing too, because they used to do that back old Woodstock days. So like Woodstock 94, and I remember this not because I was there or anything, but just the influence of the Mud People and the live performance show that 9 Inch Nails did at Woodstock 94. But Salt and Pepper went on stage right after them. You know,
Yeah.
you know, there was that kind of best of both worlds merger between that, because you could have somebody that listens to you know, let's say like Michael Jackson or whatever, but they'll listen to Slipknot because they like blues bass tones.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
Exactly.
and you know, and it's in, and there's I forget who is the author. There's like a book called The Audio Language, and it really kind of like did a little deep dive into like how our ears to our body movements to like even down to the nervous system reacts to like certain tempos and certain notations and movements.
Yeah, the standing heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right. That was the whole thing. Is I think that a lot of dance music was done just above the standing heartbeat tempo. That way, it would stimulate the will to dance. I mean, that's where it came from.
A lot of it's very old inside of us. It's like the sound of a Harley Davidson when it sounds like a galloping horse.
You can tell who owns a Harley here, right?
Yeah.
Well, and also too, if you look at people how when they walk, you know, sometimes unknowingly, a lot of people are, you know, you're walking to the tempo of your heartbeat.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's ancient. It's ancient in us.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why we were even started out with wanting to understand things like when we were making you know, woodwind instruments, for example. You know, we were just wanting to find some way to express a movement that was, you know, it had to have something with sound and tonality to it. You know, yes, you can go dance around in a circle in a field with no music behind it or whatever, but you know, you would see, especially like old Egyptian style dancing, you know, that was very, very prominent on like with movements and like how their bodies would move, or when they would do like hip shakes like really, really fast, but the music would be like half the tempo of that. So like even looking at that, like having the mental knowledge of controlling your body to do that in a rhythmic formation to something that's faster than what's being presented was really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. There's another thing that's happening too, is drummers are getting really good. I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the last 10 years, drummers are just like, maybe just because everyone has it, like, I think the YouTube thing has helped a lot as well. When I was younger, to learn to play drums, I had to go buy books, right? Nowadays, you can watch a tutorial on every style out there. And you want to know how Hellhammer does it? There's a video, right? And it's huge, right? So it's just the ability to try out all these different styles, find your technique, and start running with it is just huge, right? So in like deathcore, you know, there's been like a lot of them are now playing excesses of 300 BPM. But I found it funny when a lot of them started playing around 240, because I said the exact same thing that you've mentioned, where it's like, well, standing heart rate, what is that like? If you want to feel like you're about to dance or something like that, you're probably going to want to go for like a 120 plus or something like that, right? And so 240 is right around there. So technically, it's actually slow again. you've doubled it, right? You've doubled it, sure, but actually, you can still nod your head to the same slow tempo that you would in like a Barry Manilow song or whatnot. So and so now I'm seeing that a lot too, with these drummers just learning to do their blast beats going at like 270 and holding it, so they can at least get closer to like, you know, maybe feeling like it's 150 again.
Oh yeah, there was a study that they did where they put a bunch of people in a room, and they had speakers in the room, and they had night vision cameras, and they turned the lights off, and they just played like, you know, it was probably about like 120, and they would start increasing like the tempo and everything. And the reason they did that is they wanted to see, with nobody being able to see each other and not mimic each other or anything, or, you know, you go to like a club or like an industrial dance club or whatever, and you're looking around, everybody, you got the one or two people in there that's kind of like, okay, you do one of these, do one of these, you know, they're kind of looking around. And so they wanted to see, and everybody found the tempo in like from the waist down at least. So their arms were doing something different. They were looking moving a different way, but the feet were stomping and the knees were bending at the same tempo signature.
Right on. Biorhythms.